I said a few minutes ago, use terms that isolate you and reconnect you with your history and give you a special uniqueness so that nobody can piggyback off of you. Use the word non-immigrant. If you're gonna do wrong right. If you want to insist, for those in the audience who want to insist on using the word minority, then at least qualify and say we're the only involuntary minority, or we're the only planned minority. But don't use this term when it means everybody collectively, because the whole concept of minority means to confuse the issue and defuse any resources you could have gotten. Now, where does that come from as a minority? Let's deal with the concept a second. Now, at this point in time, black people have to understand in America, if you go back to the Constitution I was talking to you about earlier, the Federalist Papers were the document upon which the Constitution was drafted. The Federalist Papers said this, that if you're going to have a social democracy where the rule is that the majority will win and the minority will lose, then the majority has some obligations. First of all, if you use that social democracy that we're currently using, the majority have these obligations. One, it is the majority's responsibility to protect the rights of the minority. It is not your right as a minority to keep going out here marching and demonstrating. It is the dominant white society to make sure you got everything you need. That's their obligation. Point two in the Federalist Papers that gave the structure for the Constitution, it also says that if you use a social democracy like we have in the United States, that you cannot do anything to stop the minority from becoming the majority. And immediately after the Constitution went into effect, within 2 years, within a year, they enacted the immigration law to put a zero quota on blacks to make sure they stay a minority. They violated the Constitution in 1 year to make sure that you become a permanent minority. And I have not heard one black legal scholar in the United States make that an issue. None of them made it an issue. That's inappropriate behavior on the part of our legal scholars in this country. And secondly, and thirdly, in the Federalist Paper, it says, and if you fail to protect, the majority fails to protect the rights of the minority, and if you do something to impede the minority from becoming the majority the same way you became the majority, then thirdly, that minority has no right to abide by your laws and your rulings. Now think about that. Now I want to know where all my black scholars and my black legal minds, why aren't you displaying appropriate behavior and investigating that, find out why it is that you got the minority running around trying to protect itself when you know good and well it doesn't have the power and the resources to do it. That's like trying to have a baby to look out for himself when you know he cannot go out and work a job and fix his own food. It's your obligation to take care of him. But nobody raised it as an issue in this country. Where all my black legal scholars should be raising issues over the fact that in this country, that the 13th Amendment that was given to black folk, that was supposed to free black folk, was never enforced. The Emancipation Proclamation was supposed to free blacks. That's what they say in the myth. But it wasn't. The Emancipation Proclamation by Lincoln was only to free those blacks that he had no authority over in the first place. He was talking about the blacks who are any black who's in a state that broke away from the United States, you're free. He doesn't have that authority, just broke away. Now the blacks he could have freed that was still in slavery on the north side, he didn't do anything about them. To this day, they never corrected that. So legitimately, they are still enslaved. Secondly, if you put out the 13th Amendment, freeing people, let's go to the 14th Amendment. You go to the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment saying they hereby, forbade any kind of involuntary servitude. Then they stuck a clause in there, except when duly have been prosecuted and charged. You know what that means? What that meant was then that any white in the South who wanted to re-enslave black folk, all they do is come up with a charge and they can re-enslave you. And what the South did immediately after the 14th Amendment went into process, they passed what's called a Black Code in 1865 and 66. The black codes then said that any black person who used to be a slave, who's now free, he must be able to show me he has a contract for employment in his hand by the 1st of January. Or therefore I can arrest you and charge you with vagrancy and put you back into a plantation and slave you again. Now, all the people knew that. They didn't raise any cane about it. Today, that's still a part of our Constitution. I don't hear my black scholars. Where's the appropriate behavior? Now, why is that important now when I talk about appropriate behavior? Because now there's a bill on the hill where the white conservatives now want to lay claim to the 14th Amendment and say they're going to write a law called Equal Opportunity Act. What they're going to say now is that bill can be used for whites too, so that you can now not infringe on their rights. And what black folks should have done is gone back to the slaughterhouse case in 1872, which says that the 14th Amendment was strictly written for black people. That's what, see, in other words, whites are using the 14th Amendment for reverse discrimination charges against black folks. Now, you all follow me through on this. How can you allow somebody, if something is written on this side to help save you from this guy, how can you let him take the same law and knock your brains out on the other side with it? Am I losing you all on this now? But so how can whites come around now and claim use of the 14th Amendment that was written to protect black folks from whites? And now whites are taking it and using it to hit blacks with it. Where are my black lawyers and judges? And you got a black sitting on the Supreme Court now that keeps ruling, talking about he's a constitutional authority based on the Constitution. I'm just telling you, the Constitution is knocking our brains out. I don't need no more Constitution. So, but all these questions need to be raised in our court system about what's happening to us. And nobody's doing that. So in the bottom line, what I'm saying to you is that we got major problems in society, but we keep doing all these things wrong. We are poor and impoverished because we don't build communities, as I told you a few minutes ago. Secondly, we are the richest nation on earth outside of the United States as black folks. In the world, we are the 9th richest nation on earth. We got an annual disposable income of $382 billion. But we violate all the norms of economics as black folks. That's inappropriate behavior. Your money is supposed to bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves your community. I'm going to say that again. Black money is supposed to bounce 8 to 12 times. That means it must go through at least 8 to 12 black hands before it gets out of the Crenshaw neighborhood. 8 to 12 times. And it doesn't. Black money does not bounce one time. As soon as a black person gets paid, he's got this inexcusable denial in his mind saying, as soon as I get paid, I'm going to run over every other black and get into the suburbs to spend it in a white store, in a white mall. And the Jews, on the other hand, their money bounced 18 times before it leaves their community. You look at the discrepancy between one bouncing not once and one bouncing 18 times. Black people right now spend 95% of their money outside of their own communities. They spend 5% in their communities. In their communities, they spend 3% of that with non-black owned businesses. Black folks try to live off of 2% of their disposable income. They keep 2% every year. Then they take that 2% and put it into a savings account, a bank, and then they can't even get a loan from the white bank they put it into. Now, anybody's right mind knows that it's humanly impossible for you to live off of 2% of your income. It can't be done, but we keep trying to do the impossible. Why do we keep trying to live off of 2% and you know it can't be done? So what happens then is every night, every black community in America goes bankrupt when the last non-black in a black community closes up the store.